The cold hospital corridor seemed to stretch endlessly before Andrea Sinclair Thorne as she walked alongside her husband Wesley. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her usual confident stride now reduced to a hesitant shuffle. 2 weeks had passed since she had buried her father, Harrison Sinclair, the tech mogul whose innovation and vision had transformed an entire industry. Now, grief wrapped around her like a fog, dulling her usually sharp senses. Something about Wesley's insistence that she take the herbal tea he prepared each night to help her sleep felt off, but she couldn't pinpoint why. Perhaps it was just the medication making her paranoid. "I still think we should get a second opinion," Andrea said, her voice barely above a whisper as they approached the neurologist's office. "These headaches and dizzy spells, they started right after Dad's funeral." Wesley's hand tightened around hers, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "That's why we're here, darling. Dr. Hayes is the best neurologist on the East Coast. Let him do his job." As they sat in the waiting room, Andrea couldn't help but notice Wesley checking his watch repeatedly. His knee bounced with nervous energy, something she'd never seen in her normally composed husband. In the 12 years of their marriage, she had always admired his calm demeanor, especially during business negotiations. It was one of the reasons her father had promoted him to vice president of Sinclair Technologies 3 years ago. "Wesley Thorne," the receptionist called. "Dr. Hayes can see you now." Andrea frowned. "Don't you mean Andrea Sinclair Thorne?" "Both of you," the receptionist clarified, not meeting Andrea's eyes. Inside the office, Dr. Hayes, a balding man with round spectacles, greeted Wesley warmly, as if they were old friends. The sensation that something wasn't right intensified. Andrea tried to focus on the doctor's questions, but her mind felt clouded, thoughts slipping away before she could grasp them fully. "Based on your symptoms and the test results from last week, Mrs. Sinclair Thorne, I'm recommending immediate admission for observation," Dr. Hayes said, sliding a form across his desk. "Your brain scans showed some concerning patterns." "Brain scans?" Andrea blinked in confusion. "What brain scans?" "Wesley, did I have brain scans?" Wesley's expression was sympathetic as he squeezed her hand. "Don't you remember, sweetheart? Last Tuesday. You've been forgetting things a lot lately." Andrea's heart raced. Had she forgotten something so significant? She rubbed her temples, trying to recall any memory of being in a scanning machine, but found nothing. Just another blank space in the increasingly spotty tapestry of her recent memories. "I'd like to see those scans," she said firmly. "Of course," Dr. Hayes replied, turning his computer monitor toward her. The images meant nothing to Andrea's untrained eye, but the date stamp in the corner caught her attention. Last Tuesday, at 9:30 in the morning. She had been in a board meeting at that exact time, presenting the quarterly financials to the executive team. Before she could point this out, a wave of dizziness crashed over her. The room tilted alarmingly, and she gripped the arms of her chair. "You see," Wesley said to the doctor, "these episodes are getting worse." Dr. Hayes nodded gravely. "Mrs. Sinclair Thorne, I'm admitting you immediately. With your family history of aneurysms, we can't take chances." "Family history?" Andrea struggled to stand. "My family doesn't have—" The sentence remained unfinished as her knees buckled. Wesley caught her before she hit the floor. "I've got you, love. Let's get you taken care of." Andrea's vision tunneled as hospital staff appeared with a wheelchair. Through the haze, she caught fragments of conversation between Wesley and Dr. Hayes. "Special private room already prepared. Discretion is paramount given her position. Contact Dr. Harlow about the situation." The next few hours passed in a blur of hospital corridors, needle pricks, and hushed conversations just outside her hearing. Eventually, Andrea found herself in a private room on the top floor of the hospital, an IV dripping clear fluid into her arm. The windows offered a stunning view of the city skyline as dusk settled, lights beginning to twinkle in office buildings and apartments. Wesley sat beside her bed, his hand covering hers. but his attention focused on his phone. He'd been texting constantly since her admission, his fingers flying over the screen. "Who are you messaging?" Andrea asked, her voice stronger than it had been all day. The fog in her mind was beginning to lift slightly. Wesley startled, quickly pocketing his phone. "Just letting Roland know what's happening. He's worried about you." Andrea narrowed her eyes. Her godfather, Roland Blackwood, and Wesley had never gotten along. Roland had warned her father against promoting Wesley, calling him opportunistic. The idea of Wesley voluntarily contacting Roland seemed unlikely. "Let me talk to him," she said, extending her hand for the phone. "You need to rest," Wesley replied, standing abruptly. "The doctors are running more tests. I'll go check on the results." As soon as Wesley left the room, Andrea tried to sit up, fighting against the heaviness in her limbs. Something was very wrong. She needed to call Roland herself, but her purse and phone were nowhere to be seen. With trembling fingers, she reached for the call button, but before she could press it, a nurse entered with a syringe. "Just something to help you rest, Mrs. Sinclair Thorne," the woman said professionally, injecting the contents into Andrea's IV line before she could protest. Warmth flooded her veins, and darkness crowded the edges of her vision. The last thing she saw was Wesley returning, standing in the doorway with Dr. Vincent Harlow, the hospital director, both men watching her with clinical detachment as consciousness slipped away. Andrea dreamed of her father. In the dream, they sat in his study, the room bathed in warm lamplight as a storm raged outside. Harrison Sinclair looked healthy and vital, not like the frail man who had suddenly collapsed at his 70th birthday celebration 2 months ago. "Dad," she said in the dream, "I think something's happening to me." "Follow the money, Andy," her father replied, using her childhood nickname. "Always follow the money. That's what I taught you." "What money?" she asked, but her father was already fading, the study dissolving around them. "The missing $5 million from the Archer project," his voice echoed. "Look there." Andrea jolted awake to the sound of hushed voices. The hospital room was dark now, illuminated only by the city lights through the window and the dim glow of medical monitors. The clock on the wall showed 3:27 in the morning. She kept her eyes nearly closed, watching through her lashes. Wesley stood near the foot of her bed, with Dr. Harlow. Between them was a document on a clipboard. "Everything is prepared," Dr. Harlow was saying. "With her medical power of attorney, your signature is all we need." "And there will be no autopsy?" Wesley asked, his voice eerily calm. "Given her documented condition, an autopsy won't be necessary. We'll cite brain aneurysm as cause of death, consistent with the falsified family history we've established." Andrea fought to keep her breathing steady as terror gripped her. "Death certificate." They were discussing her death certificate. "And the payment?" Dr. Harlow asked. "The first half has already been transferred to your offshore account," Wesley replied. "The second half will follow once the death certificate is issued." "Very well. The medication has already been added to her IV. Heart failure should follow within the hour, appearing entirely natural given her supposed condition." Andrea felt ice spreading through her veins. Whether from fear or the drug, she couldn't tell. As the men shook hands, she made a split-second decision. With a tremendous effort, she pulled the IV from her arm, stifling her gasp of pain. The monitors immediately began to alarm. Dr. Harlow cursed, rushing to silence them. "What happened?" Wesley demanded. "She must have dislodged the IV in her sleep," Dr. Harlow responded, examining the needle. "I'll need to reinsert it." Andrea allowed her eyes to flutter open, feigning grogginess. "Wes?" she mumbled. "What's happening?" Wesley was instantly at her side, his expression a perfect mask of concern. "The IV came out, sweetheart. Dr. Harlow needs to put it back in." "No," Andrea said, her voice deliberately weak. "I'm feeling sick from it. Can we wait until morning? Please?" Wesley and Dr. Harlow exchanged glances. "Of course," Wesley finally said. "Whatever makes you comfortable." "I'll have a nurse check on her regularly," Dr. Harlow added, his professional demeanor firmly back in place. Try to get some rest, Mrs. Sinclair Thorne." After they left, Andrea lay completely still, her mind racing. She had to escape. But how? She was too weak to walk far, and undoubtedly Wesley or hospital staff would be monitoring her. She needed help, but who could she trust in a hospital where the director himself was complicit in a murder plot? The door opened again, and Andrea tensed. A young orderly entered pushing a small cart. He seemed startled to find her awake. "Sorry to disturb you, ma'am," he said quietly. "Just need to change your water pitcher." As he approached the bedside, Andrea made a desperate decision. She grabbed his wrist. "Help me," she whispered urgently. "They're trying to kill me." The orderly's eyes widened, and for a moment she feared he would call for security. Instead, he leaned closer, checking over his shoulder to ensure they were alone. "Who?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "My husband and Dr. Harlow. They've been drugging me. They're planning to fake my death." Even to her own ears, it sounded like the ravings of a paranoid patient. The young man's eyes narrowed as he studied her face. Then, surprisingly, he nodded. "I believe you," he said. "Dr. Harlow's been involved in some shady business before. Nothing anyone could prove, but please," Andrea begged. "I need to get out of here." The orderly, his badge read Liam Prescott, thought for a moment. "I can help you, but not right now. Too many people around. I finish my shift at 6. By then, most staff will be changing shifts. It creates confusion, perfect for slipping away. Can you hang on until then?" Andrea nodded, hope flaring for the first time. "Yes, but they'll be checking on me?" "Pretend to sleep whenever anyone comes in," Liam advised. "I'll come back with a wheelchair and scrubs for you to change into. We'll make it look like a routine patient transfer." After Liam left, Andrea lay back, her mind whirling with questions. Why was Wesley trying to kill her? What had happened to her father? Was his death also no accident? And who was this orderly, willing to risk his job, perhaps even criminal charges, to help a stranger? The next 2 hours were the longest of Andrea's life. She feigned sleep through 3 nurse checks, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain they could hear it. When a nurse attempted to reinsert her IV, Andrea complained of pain and asked for it to be delayed until morning, when her regular doctor would be present. The nurse seemed suspicious, but eventually agreed. At 10 minutes to 6, the door opened again. Andrea's breath caught in her throat, but it was Liam, as promised, with a wheelchair and a small bag. "We have to move fast," he whispered, helping her sit up. "Dr. Harlow just arrived for early rounds. He's starting on the floor below us." Andrea's legs trembled as she stood, her body still fighting off whatever drugs they'd given her. Liam supported her weight as she changed into scrubs behind a privacy screen, then helped her into the wheelchair. "Keep your head down," he instructed, placing a surgical mask over her face. Hair tucked in, he handed her a surgical cap, which she gratefully pulled over her distinctive auburn hair. Liam pushed her out of the room and down the corridor toward the service elevator. They passed a nurse who barely glanced their way, too busy with her charts. The elevator doors had just opened when Andrea heard Wesley's voice around the corner. "What do you mean she's sleeping? Wake her up. We need to proceed with the procedure now." Liam pushed the wheelchair into the elevator and punched the button for the basement repeatedly. As the doors began to close, Andrea caught a glimpse of Wesley rounding the corner, Dr. Harlow at his side. For one heart-stopping moment, their eyes met across the narrowing gap. "Stop that elevator!" Wesley shouted, but the doors had already closed. "He saw me!" Andrea gasped as the elevator descended. "Change of plans," Liam said grimly. "We're heading to the morgue." "The morgue?" "Last place they'll look for a living person," Liam explained as the elevator reached the basement. "Plus, I have access. I've been moonlighting in the pathology department to pay for medical school." The doors opened to a dimly lit corridor. Liam pushed her quickly past storage rooms and maintenance areas until they reached a set of heavy double doors marked Morgue, Authorized Personnel Only. He swiped his ID card, and they entered a large, cold room with stainless steel tables and wall-mounted compartments for bodies. The antiseptic smell made Andrea's stomach turn. "Nobody will be down here for at least an hour," Liam said, locking the door behind them. "Morning autopsies don't start until 7:30. Andrea stood shakily from the wheelchair, hugging herself against the chill. "What now?" "They'll lock down the hospital when they realize I'm missing. Which is why we're not leaving through the hospital," Liam replied, moving to a locker against the far wall. He extracted a set of street clothes and a lab coat. "There's a service tunnel connecting to the parking garage. Maintenance staff and some medical examiners use it to avoid the main entrance." As Andrea changed into the offered clothes, which were too large but would serve their purpose, she studied Liam properly for the first time. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with intelligent eyes and a face that somehow inspired trust. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "You don't know me. You're risking everything." Liam paused, something unreadable crossing his face. "Let's just say I recognize the signs of someone being silenced, and I've had my suspicions about Harlow for years." He handed her a baseball cap. "Besides, you don't strike me as delusional, and those two were definitely up to something." "I need to get to Roland Blackwood," Andrea said, tucking her hair under the cap. "He's my godfather, and my father's attorney. If anyone can help me, it's him." "First, we need to get you somewhere safe," Liam countered. "Your husband will have people watching your godfather's home and office." A sudden commotion in the corridor outside made them both freeze. Through the small window in the door, they could see security personnel moving quickly, checking rooms. "They're searching the basement already," Liam whispered. "We need to move." He guided her to what appeared to be a large storage closet at the back of the morgue. Inside, behind shelves of supplies, was a metal door with a keypad. "Service tunnel," he explained, punching in a code. "Only maintenance and morgue staff know about it." The door swung open to reveal a dimly lit concrete passage. They hurried through, Liam pulling the door shut behind them. The tunnel stretched ahead, emergency lights casting eerie shadows on the walls. "My car's in the staff section of the garage," Liam said, as they walked briskly. "Stay close." Andrea's mind raced with questions and fears. Her husband had tried to kill her. Her father's death might not have been natural, and now she was fleeing through a secret tunnel with a stranger who might be her only ally. "What about your job?" she asked. "They'll know you helped me." "I was planning to quit anyway," Liam replied with a grim smile. "I've seen too many ethical corners cut at that hospital. This was just the last straw." They reached another door at the end of the tunnel. Liam peered through its window before pushing it open carefully. They emerged between two concrete pillars in the lowest level of the parking garage. "My car's just over there," Liam pointed to an older model sedan parked several spaces away. "Once we're out, I know a place where you'll be safe temporarily. Then we can figure out our next steps." As they approached the vehicle, Andrea's legs finally gave out. The combination of drugs, stress, and fear overwhelmed her system, and darkness clouded her vision. The last thing she heard was Liam's concerned voice calling her name as she collapsed into his arms. Andrea regained consciousness to the steady hum of an unfamiliar engine. Her eyelids felt heavy, but she forced them open, momentarily disoriented by the movement of the vehicle. She was reclined in the passenger seat of Liam's sedan, a jacket draped over her like a blanket. Through the windshield, she could see they were on a highway, tall pines lining the roadside. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows across the dashboard. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Liam glanced over, relief evident in his expression. "About 70 miles north of the city. You've been out for almost 2 hours. How are you feeling?" Andrea took stock of her condition. The fog in her mind had mostly cleared, but her limbs felt leaden, and her mouth was painfully dry. "Like I've been hit by a truck," she admitted, "but better than before." "Clearer. Good. Whatever they gave you is working its way out of your system." He handed her a water bottle from the center console. "Small sips. You're probably dehydrated." As Andrea drank, memories of the hospital came flooding back. Wesley and Dr. Harlow discussing her death certificate, the midnight escape, the realization that her husband had tried to murder her. She shuddered, nearly choking on the water. "We need to go to the police," she said, once she'd recovered. Liam shook his head. "Not yet. Your husband is a powerful man with connections. If Dr. Harlow is willing to help him commit murder, who else might be on his payroll? We need evidence first." Andrea knew he was right. Wesley was the vice president of Sinclair Technologies and had cultivated relationships with influential people throughout the city, including the police commissioner, who had been a frequent guest at their dinner parties. "Then where are we going?" "My mother's cabin," Liam answered. "She passed away last year, but I kept the place. It's isolated, about 20 miles from the nearest town. No one knows about it, except my sister, and she lives in Europe." Andrea studied her unlikely savior. In the morning light, she could see the fatigue etched on his face, the stubble on his jaw. Despite his exhaustion, his eyes remained alert, constantly checking the rearview mirror. "Why are you doing all this for me?" she asked again. The truth, this time. Liam was quiet for a moment, seemingly weighing his words. 3 years ago, a patient came into the ER where I was working, a woman with unusual symptoms. She was disoriented, experiencing memory gaps. Her husband was very concerned, very attentive. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. She died that night. Heart failure, they said. Natural causes. But you didn't believe it, Andrea guessed. I had doubts. Some of her symptoms didn't match the diagnosis, but I was just a resident and her husband was friends with the hospital board. Liam took a deep breath. 6 months later, he married her best friend and took control of her family's company. Sound familiar? A chill ran through Andrea. You think Wesley has done this before? I think men like your husband and Dr. Harlow believe they're untouchable, Liam replied, and I couldn't live with myself if I stood by and watched it happen again. They drove in silence for several minutes, Andrea processing this new information. Could Wesley have killed before? The man she'd married 12 years ago had been ambitious, but caring. When had he changed? Or had she simply been blind to his true nature all along? My father, she said suddenly. His death. It happened so suddenly. 1 minute he was fine, celebrating his birthday, and the next, her voice broke. Wesley insisted on cremation. Said Dad would have wanted it that way, but that wasn't true. Dad always talked about being buried next to my mother. Liam nodded grimly. First your father, then you. With both of you gone, who would control Sinclair Technologies? Wesley, Andrea whispered. As my husband, he'd inherit my shares, which combined with his own would give him controlling interest. And with you declared mentally unstable before your death, any changes you might have made to your will could be challenged. Andrea's mind raced, connecting dots. The missing 5 million, she murmured. What? In my dream last night, my father told me to follow the money. $5 million disappeared from the Archer project 2 months ago. I was investigating it before Dad died. Liam turned onto a narrow gravel road that wound deeper into the forest. You think Wesley took it? I don't know. But Dad always said that white-collar crimes leave paper trails. If Wesley stole from the company, there would be evidence. Andrea straightened in her seat. I need my laptop, my files. They're in my home office. Your house will be the first place they'll look for you, Liam pointed out. Not our main house, Andrea replied. My lake house. It was my father's wedding gift to us. Wesley rarely goes there. Says it's too rustic for his taste. I keep backups of important documents there. Liam considered this. Is it far from here? About 40 miles east of where we are now, I think, near Crescent Lake. We'll go tomorrow, Liam decided. Today you need to rest and fully recover. We can make plans once we're safe at the cabin. The road narrowed further, becoming little more than a dirt track through increasingly dense forest. Finally, Liam turned onto an almost invisible driveway, branches scraping against the car's sides as they pushed through. After about 100 yards, the trees opened up to reveal a small clearing where a rustic log cabin stood. its windows reflecting the late morning sunlight. "It's not much," Liam said as he parked, "but it's off the grid. Solar panels for minimal electricity, well water, propane heating, no landline, and cell service is spotty at best. We'll need to go into town to make secure calls." The cabin was indeed modest, just one main room with a kitchenette and living area, plus a small bedroom and bathroom. But it was clean and cozy, with handmade quilts on the furniture and shelves lined with books. It smelled of pine and wood smoke. "My mother was a bit of a prepper," Liam explained, opening the pantry to reveal shelves stocked with canned goods and staples. "Always kept enough supplies for a few weeks. Force of habit after growing up during the Depression." As Liam busied himself with starting a fire in the small wood stove, Andrea sank onto the worn but comfortable sofa, the events of the past 24 hours finally catching up with her. Despite the daylight, exhaustion pulled at her. She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, Liam was gently shaking her shoulder. "Sorry to wake you, but you should eat something," he said, offering a bowl of soup. "It'll help clear the remaining drugs from your system." The homemade vegetable soup was simple, but exactly what Andrea needed. As she ate, Liam outlined his immediate concerns. "By now, Wesley will have reported you missing. They'll spin a story, probably claim you were mentally unstable, perhaps suicidal. They'll make it seem like you escaped during a psychiatric episode." "And if they find me?" Andrea asked, setting down her spoon. "They'll either force you back for treatment, or—" Liam didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "So I'm already legally dead or insane," Andrea said bitterly. "Either way, I can't just walk into a police station." "Not without evidence," Liam agreed. "We need proof of what Wesley and Harlow were planning, and possibly proof of what happened to your father." Andrea rubbed her temples, trying to think clearly. "Okay, tomorrow we go to the lake house for my files. I need to contact Roland Blackwood, but carefully. Wesley will expect me to reach out to him. Is there anyone else you trust completely? Someone Wesley wouldn't suspect?" Andrea thought for a moment. "My father's former assistant, Grace Chen. She retired last year but was like family to us. Wesley always dismissed her as unimportant, just another employee. But she knows everything about my father's business and personal affairs." "Good. We'll find a way to contact her securely." Liam glanced at his watch. "I should go into town before the stores close. We need supplies, and I want to get a burner phone. I'll come with you." Andrea started to rise. "Not a good idea," Liam countered. "Your face might be on the news already, and even in a small town, someone could recognize you. It's better if you stay here and rest." Though frustrated, Andrea knew he was right. She was still weak, and revealing herself publicly would be dangerous. "Be careful," she said, as Liam prepared to leave. "Wesley has resources. If they've identified you as my accomplice, small-town grocery runs aren't exactly where they'll be focusing their search efforts," Liam said with a reassuring smile. "Besides, I grew up dodging trouble. I'll be fine." After Liam left, Andrea explored the cabin more thoroughly, partly out of curiosity and partly to keep her mind occupied. In a desk drawer, she found a collection of local maps, including one of Crescent Lake where her vacation house was located. She studied it carefully, identifying possible approach routes that would keep them away from main roads. In the bedroom, a bookshelf held medical textbooks alongside fiction and survival guides. Andrea realized how little she knew about Liam Prescott. He'd said he worked at the hospital to pay for medical school, but those textbooks were at least a decade old. What had delayed his medical career? And what had he meant by growing up dodging trouble? Her exploration was interrupted by a noise outside. A vehicle approaching. Panic seized her. It was too soon for Liam to return. Had Wesley's men found her already? Andrea quickly doused the fire in the wood stove, plunging the cabin into cold silence. She searched frantically for a weapon, finding only a heavy cast-iron skillet in the kitchen. Armed with this makeshift defense, she positioned herself behind the door, heart pounding as footsteps crunched on the gravel outside. The door handle turned slowly. Andrea raised the skillet, prepared to strike. "It's just me," Liam called out before pushing the door open. The store was closing early. Andrea sagged with relief, lowering her improvised weapon. "You scared me to death." "Sorry," Liam said, entering with arms full of grocery bags. "But I've got news." He set the bags down and pulled out a local newspaper. "You're not dead or insane. At least, not officially. Not yet." Andrea took the paper. A small article on the front page caught her eye. Tech heiress hospitalized. Sinclair Thorne family requests privacy. The brief write-up mentioned that Andrea Sinclair Thorne, daughter of the late tech mogul Harrison Sinclair and current co-owner of Sinclair Technologies, had been admitted to Metropolitan Hospital for exhaustion and stress following her father's recent passing. "He's keeping it quiet," Andrea realized. "No mention of my disappearance." Liam nodded. "I think he's trying to buy time. If the public knows you're missing, there will be questions, investigations. He needs to find me first," Andrea concluded, "either to bring me back and continue with his plan or make sure you're never found," Liam finished grimly. "I got the burner phone, but we should use it sparingly. Every call is a potential trace." While Liam prepared a simple dinner, Andrea studied the newspaper more carefully, searching for any other relevant information. On page 3, a small business notice caught her attention. Sinclair Technologies had announced an emergency board meeting for the following Monday, just 4 days away. The stated purpose was restructuring in the wake of recent tragic events. "He's making his move," she said, showing Liam the notice. "With me hospitalized, he'll try to convince the board to grant him temporary control. Once that happens, it's a small step to permanent power, especially if I turn up dead." "Then we have a deadline," Liam replied. 4 days to gather enough evidence to stop him." That night, Andrea slept fitfully on the sofa while Liam took the bedroom floor, insisting she needed the comfort more than he did. Her dreams were chaotic, fragments of memories and fears swirling together. She saw her father's face, heard Wesley's laugh, felt the cold hospital floor beneath her feet as she fled. She woke with a start just before dawn, a realization breaking through her consciousness. "The tea!" she gasped. Liam, already awake and stoking the wood stove, turned. "What?" "The herbal tea Wesley was giving me every night since Dad died. He said it would help me sleep, help with grief." Andrea sat up, fully alert now. "That's how he was drugging me. Small doses, building up in my system over weeks. That's why I've been having memory problems, feeling confused, making you appear mentally unstable." Liam nodded. "So when you finally died from natural causes, everyone would say they saw it coming. The grieving daughter, deteriorating after her father's death. We need to go to the lake house today," Andrea said firmly. "Not just for the files now. I kept one of the tea bags. I was planning to have it analyzed because it tasted strange, but then Dad's funeral happened, and I forgot." They set out an hour later, after a quick breakfast. Liam's sedan wasn't built for the rough back roads they took to avoid main highways, but it managed. Andrea directed him using the maps she'd found, taking the least traveled routes to Crescent Lake. "There's a service road that leads directly to the back of the property," she explained as they approached the area. "The house is fairly secluded. The nearest neighbor is half a mile away, and most people don't come up here until summer." The lake house was a modern 2-story structure of wood and glass, designed to blend with its natural surroundings while offering panoramic views of the water. As they pulled up to the garage, Andrea punched a code into a keypad hidden beneath a rock. "Security system disabled," she said. "We have 20 minutes before it automatically reactivates." Inside, the house was exactly as Andrea had left it 2 months ago when she had last visited. Clean and orderly, furniture covered with dust sheets to protect against disuse. She moved quickly to her office, a small room overlooking the lake. "I need to find the tea first," she said, heading to the kitchen. In the pantry, she located a small wooden box where she kept teas and herbs. "Here it is." She held up a small silk bag, its contents dark and aromatic. Wesley brought it back from a business trip to Asia, said it was a special blend for emotional healing. Liam took the bag carefully. We'll need to get this analyzed by someone trustworthy. Roland can help with that, Andrea replied. Now for the files. She returned to the office and removed a landscape painting from the wall, revealing a small safe. After entering the combination, she retrieved a laptop and several USB drives. I started keeping separate copies of sensitive documents after I noticed discrepancies in the Archer project, she explained, powering up the laptop. Something didn't add up with the financials, but I couldn't figure out what. Dad always taught me to trust my instincts. While the computer booted, Andrea moved to the window, scanning the surrounding forest and lakefront. We should be safe here for a few hours. No one knows I'm here, and Wesley never bothered with cameras. He thought they ruined the aesthetic. Liam joined her at the window. Beautiful view. I can see why your father chose this spot. He loved it here, Andrea said softly. Said it reminded him of where he grew up. After Mom died, he would come up here to think, to reconnect with himself away from corporate pressures. She swallowed hard. I still can't believe he's gone. A notification sound from the laptop drew their attention. Andrea sat down and began navigating through encrypted folders. Here's what I've found so far on the Archer project. $5 million diverted through a series of shell companies, ultimately leading to an account in the Cayman Islands. Can you trace the account holder? Liam asked, leaning over her shoulder. Not directly, but… Andrea stopped abruptly, staring at the screen. That's odd. Look at these transfer dates. The screen showed a series of transfers, each for different amounts, but all occurring on the same day of the month, the 15th, over 6 consecutive months. And here's the board meeting calendar, Andrea said, opening another file. Notice anything? Liam studied the document. The transfers all happened during board meetings. Exactly. Times when most of the executive team would be occupied, unable to notice unusual system access. Andrea pulled up another file. But Wesley wasn't in those meetings. As VP of Development, he isn't required to attend financial oversight sessions. So, while everyone was distracted with boardroom business, Wesley was moving money out the back door, Liam concluded. But that's not all, Andrea continued, her voice growing excited as pieces fell into place. Look at this email thread between my father and our head of security. The emails detailed Harrison's growing concerns about unauthorized access to the company's financial systems. The last message, dated just 3 days before his death, mentioned a meeting he had scheduled with a forensic accountant. Dad knew, Andrea whispered. He was investigating the missing money. He must have suspected Wesley, which gave Wesley a motive to get rid of him, Liam added grimly, and explains why he tried to kill me too. I was picking up where Dad left off. Andrea leaned back in her chair, a mix of emotions crossing her face. Grief, anger, determination. We need to compile all of this, show it to Roland, and then take it to the authorities. As Andrea began downloading files onto a fresh USB drive, Liam's phone chimed with a text alert. His expression darkened as he read the message. What is it? Andrea asked. A contact at the hospital, Liam replied. Wesley has hired private investigators to find us. They've identified me from security footage and have been questioning hospital staff. Andrea's fingers froze over the keyboard. How close are they? They know I have a mother who passed away recently, which means they could find this cabin eventually. And they know what car I drive. We need to move faster, Andrea decided, resuming her download. Let me finish this, and then we'll contact Roland from town. After that, we ditch your car and find alternative transportation. Bantijan, as the files transferred, Andrea moved through the house, collecting essential items. Warm clothes, a first aid kit, emergency cash she kept in another hidden safe. Liam watched the windows and driveway, increasingly uneasy. Almost done, Andrea called from the office. Just as she was about to remove the USB drive, headlights swept across the front of the house. A vehicle was coming up the main driveway. Liam rushed to the office doorway. Someone's here. We need to go. Now. Andrea grabbed the laptop and USB drive, shoving them into a backpack along with the tea bag. They moved quickly to the rear of the house as car doors slammed outside. "The service road," Andrea whispered, leading the way to the back door. They slipped out just as they heard the front door crash open. Male voices called out, instructing others to search the property. Liam and Andrea ran for the tree line, staying low. Behind them, flashlight beams began to sweep the yard. They had just reached the dense forest when a shout went up. "There! By the trees!" A gunshot cracked through the air, splintering bark inches from Andrea's head. Liam grabbed her arm, pulling her deeper into the darkness of the forest. "Run!" he urged, as they plunged into the underbrush, the sounds of pursuit growing behind them. Night had fallen by the time Andrea and Liam stopped running. The forest around Crescent Lake was dense, the underbrush thick, providing cover but making progress difficult. They had fled for what felt like hours, changing direction frequently to throw off pursuit. Now they crouched in a small hollow beneath a fallen tree, catching their breath, listening for sounds of their hunters. "I think we lost them," Liam whispered after several minutes of silence. "For now, at least." Andrea nodded, unable to speak. Her lungs burned, and her legs trembled with exhaustion. The adrenaline that had fueled their escape was fading, leaving her cold and shaky. April nights in the mountains were still frigid, and neither of them was dressed for extended outdoor exposure. "We need to keep moving," she finally managed, her voice barely audible. "They'll bring in more people, maybe dogs. First, let's figure out where we are." Liam pulled out his phone. No signal, as expected, but the GPS might still work. The screen's glow illuminated their hiding place as he pulled up a map application. After a moment, he pointed to their approximate location. "We're about 3 miles south of your lake house. There's a small town called Millridge, about 7 miles east of here." He zoomed in further. "And a ranger station half that distance. That might be our best bet for the night." Andrea nodded, hugging herself against the cold. "The rangers know me. My father donated the land for that station. If Ranger Cooper is still there, he'll help us without asking too many questions." They set off toward the ranger station, moving more carefully now. The quarter moon provided just enough light to navigate without flashlights, which might give away their position. The forest was alive with night sounds, the hoot of owls, the rustling of small creatures in the underbrush, the occasional distant howl of a coyote. "So you spent a lot of time up here?" Liam asked quietly as they walked, trying to keep Andrea's mind occupied and alert. "Every summer growing up," she replied, grateful for the distraction from her fear. "Dad would take 2 weeks off, and we'd fish, hike, identify plants and animals. He said nature was the best classroom. Sounds like he was a good father." "The best," Andrea's voice caught. "After Mom died from cancer when I was 12, he somehow managed to be both parents. Never missed a school event. Taught me everything he knew about business. He used to say." She broke off as her foot caught on a root, nearly sending her sprawling. Liam caught her arm, steadying her. "Careful. Thanks," she muttered, embarrassed by her clumsiness. "I'm not usually this uncoordinated. Must still be some lingering effects from whatever they gave me." "You're doing remarkably well considering you were nearly killed yesterday," Liam assured her. "Most people would still be bedridden after the cocktail of drugs they pumped into you." They continued in silence for a while, the terrain becoming steeper as they approached the ridge that separated them from the ranger station. Andrea was painfully aware of every sound around them, every shadow that might conceal a pursuer. The gravity of her situation pressed down on her. Her husband had murdered her father and tried to kill her for money and power. Now she was a fugitive, hunted, officially unstable, according to whatever story Wesley was spinning. "I can't believe I never saw it," she said suddenly. 12 years of marriage, and I had no idea who he really was." "Sociopaths are expert manipulators," Liam replied. "They show you exactly what you want to see." "But there must have been signs," Andrea insisted. "Something I missed." Liam was quiet for a moment. "May I ask how you two met?" At a charity gala my father's foundation was hosting, Andrea answered, remembering. Wesley was working for a venture capital firm then. He was charming, brilliant, seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts about sustainable technology. Within 6 months, we were engaged. And your father? How did he feel about Wesley? Andrea frowned. He was cautious at first, said Wesley was ambitious, which could be good or bad depending on his character. But over time, Wesley won him over, or seemed to. Now I wonder if that was all calculated. They reached the top of the ridge, and Liam paused, surveying the valley below. In the distance, they could see tiny lights. The ranger station. About 2 more miles, he estimated. How are you holding up? I'll make it, Andrea assured him, though her entire body ached with fatigue. I just keep thinking about the emergency board meeting. 3 days from now, Wesley could legally take control of everything my father built, everything he dedicated his life to protecting. We won't let that happen, Liam promised. 1 step at a time. First, we get somewhere safe. Then we contact Roland Blackwood and present our evidence. As they started down the ridge, a new sound reached them, the distant but unmistakable barking of dogs. They brought tracking dogs, Andrea whispered, panic rising in her throat. We'll never outrun them. Liam thought quickly. The stream we crossed earlier. We need to get back to it. Water will mask our scent trail. They changed direction, moving as quickly as possible through the darkened forest toward the sound of running water. When they reached the stream, Liam led the way, stepping carefully from rock to avoid leaving tracks along the muddy bank. We'll follow it downstream for half a mile or so, he explained, then cut east toward the ranger station. The water was numbingly cold, soaking through their shoes and pant legs as they occasionally slipped off the rocks. After 20 minutes of difficult progress, the barking seemed to grow fainter. I think it's working, Andrea said hopefully. They continued downstream until the terrain forced them to return to land. By now, they were thoroughly chilled, their wet clothes clinging uncomfortably. The ranger station should be about a mile that way. Liam pointed east, consulting his phone's GPS again. As they neared the station, the trees thinned, revealing a small clearing with a rustic wood and stone building. Light shone from the windows, and a green forestry service truck was parked outside. Wait here, Andrea instructed, stepping out of the trees. Let me approach alone first. If something seems off, I'll come right back. Liam looked reluctant, but nodded. Be careful. Andrea walked toward the station, trying to appear casual despite her disheveled, wet appearance. Her heart pounded as she approached the door and knocked. A moment later, it swung open to reveal a sturdy, gray-haired man in a ranger's uniform. His weathered face broke into a smile of recognition. Miss Sinclair? I mean, Mrs. Thorne now, I suppose. What on earth brings you up here this time of year? And in such a state? Relief flooded through Andrea. Ranger Cooper. I'm so glad it's you. I need help. I'm in trouble. The ranger's expression sobered immediately. Come in. Come in. He peered past her into the darkness. Are you alone? No. I have a friend with me. Andrea turned and waved to Liam, who emerged from the trees and joined them. Once inside, Ranger Cooper, Frank, as he insisted they call him, provided them with dry clothes, hot coffee, and a place by the wood stove. As they warmed up, Andrea gave him a carefully edited version of events. She and Liam were being pursued by men working for her husband, who was attempting to steal her company and had threatened her safety. I always thought there was something off about that city slicker, Frank muttered, referring to Wesley. Your father felt the same way, you know. Last time he was up here, he mentioned concerns. Andrea sat up straighter. When was this? Oh, about 3 months ago. February, I reckon. Cold as all get out, but he insisted on coming up alone for a weekend. Said he needed to think, make some decisions. Did he mention what kind of decisions? Andrea pressed. Frank scratched his beard thoughtfully. Well, he talked about restructuring the company leadership. Said something about evidence and not being sure who to trust. I figured it was just business talk. Andrea and Liam exchanged glances. This confirmed their suspicions. Harrison had been investigating Wesley and was planning some kind of action against him. Frank, we need to contact my godfather, Roland Blackwood, without being traced. Is there a secure phone I could use? There's the station's satellite phone, Frank offered. Not connected to regular cell networks. We use it for emergencies when the regular lines are down. While Frank set up the phone, Liam spoke quietly to Andrea. Are you sure about this? If Wesley has already contacted Roland has been like a second father to me, Andrea replied firmly. He would never betray me to Wesley. Besides, he's the executor of my father's estate. If anyone can help us legally stop Wesley, it's him. The call went through on the third ring. Roland's familiar voice, gruff with age but still commanding, answered cautiously. Roland, it's Andrea, she said quickly. I'm safe. Don't tell anyone you've heard from me. Oh? There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Thank God, Roland finally said. Wesley reported you missing from the hospital. He's telling everyone you had a breakdown after Harrison's death. He tried to kill me, Roland. He and the hospital director were going to make it look like I died from natural causes. I knew something was wrong, Roland growled. When Wesley told me you were hospitalized for mental issues, it didn't ring true. You've always been the most level-headed person I know, even as a child. Andrea quickly outlined what they had discovered about Wesley's embezzlement and her suspicions regarding her father's death. I need your help, she concluded. Wesley's called an emergency board meeting for Monday to seize control of the company. We have evidence of his crimes, but we need legal protection to present it. Where are you now? Roland asked. Andrea hesitated, looking at Liam, who nodded. At the ranger station near Crescent Lake, but we can't stay here long. Wesley's men are searching the area with dogs. I know a place, Roland said decisively. My hunting cabin on Bear Mountain. It's completely off-grid, and only Harrison and I knew about it. I can meet you there tomorrow morning. He gave them detailed directions to the cabin, which was about 15 miles from their current location. Be careful who you trust, he added, before ending the call. Wesley has friends in high places. I'll bring supplies and my own security people. Men I've known for decades. We'll figure this out together. After the call ended, Frank insisted they rest for a few hours before continuing their journey. You won't make it to Bear Mountain in your condition, he said firmly. I've got cots in the back room. Get some sleep. I'll keep watch. Despite her exhaustion, Andrea found sleep elusive. Her mind raced with all they had learned, all they still needed to do. When she did drift off, her dreams were troubled, images of her father trying to warn her, Wesley's face transforming into something monstrous, endless corridors with no escape. She woke with a start a few hours later to find Liam already up, studying a topographical map of the area with Frank. Dawn was just beginning to break outside the windows. Good. You're up, Frank said when he noticed her. I've packed you some provisions. It's about a 6-hour hike to Roland's cabin if you take it steady. Any sign of Wesley's men? Andrea asked, accepting a mug of coffee. Nothing yet, but they're out there, Frank replied grimly. Got a call from the eastern checkpoint about an hour ago. Private security types asking about 2 lost hikers matching your description. Said they were family members concerned about your health. They're closing in, Liam observed. We should get moving. Frank showed them a trail on the map that would take them to Bear Mountain while avoiding main paths and roads. It's not the easiest route, but it's the least likely to be monitored. Before they left, Frank pressed a handheld radio into Andrea's hand. Emergency channel only. I'll be listening. Range is about 10 miles in this terrain. The morning air was crisp and clear as they set out, the forest coming alive with birdsong around them. Under different circumstances, Andrea might have enjoyed the hike. Her father had taught her to love these mountains, to respect their beauty and challenges. Now they offered sanctuary, a place to hide while she fought to reclaim her life and bring Wesley to justice. They made good progress for the first few hours, following game trails and natural ridgelines as Frank had instructed. The backpack with the laptop and evidence felt increasingly heavy on Andrea's shoulders, but she refused Liam's offers to carry it. That backpack contained her future, her father's legacy. She wouldn't entrust it to anyone else, not even her unlikely ally. Around midday, they stopped in a small clearing to rest and eat some of the food Frank had provided. Energy bars, dried fruit, jerky. As Andrea sipped from her water bottle, she studied Liam, who was checking their position on the map. "You're good at this," she observed. "Navigating, survival skills. Not typical for a medical student." Liam glanced up with a half-smile. "I grew up in places like this. My father was a forest ranger in Wyoming before he died. Mom and I moved around a lot after that, but she made sure I never lost touch with the skills he taught me." "And medical school? You mentioned working at the hospital to pay for it?" A shadow crossed Liam's face. "I was in my 3rd year when my mother was diagnosed with kidney disease. Insurance wouldn't cover all her treatments. I took a leave of absence, worked multiple jobs to pay the medical bills. By the time she passed last year, I was too far in debt to return immediately." "I'm sorry," Andrea said softly. "About your mother?" Liam nodded acknowledgement, then quickly changed the subject. "We should keep moving. Still a long way to go." They continued their journey, the terrain becoming steeper and more challenging as they approached Bear Mountain. The forest here was older, the trees massive, creating a cathedral-like atmosphere of filtered light and deep shadow. Roland said, "The cabin is near the ridgeline," Andrea said, as they paused to catch their breath after a particularly steep climb. "Should be visible once we reach that outcropping up ahead." Just as they were about to resume hiking, a distinct crack echoed through the forest, the unmistakable sound of a branch breaking under human weight. They froze, exchanging alarmed glances. "Could be an animal," Liam whispered, though his expression suggested he didn't believe it. Another snap, closer this time, followed by the murmur of voices. Definitely human. Without a word, they slipped behind a large boulder, crouching low. Through a small gap, they could see movement in the trees below. Men in dark clothing moving systematically through the forest, communicating via hand signals. They wore tactical gear and carried what looked like tranquilizer rifles. "Professional trackers," Liam breathed in Andrea's ear. "They're hurting us." Andrea's mind raced. If they continued toward the cabin, they might lead Wesley's men straight to Roland. If they turned back, they'd likely run into another search team. They were being boxed in. The radio at her hip suddenly crackled to life. Frank's voice, urgent but kept low. "Andrea, if you can hear me, don't respond. Men in black SUVs just rolled up to the station. They've got government credentials, but something's off. They're asking specific questions about your destination. I told them nothing, but they're monitoring all frequencies. Going silent now. Be careful." Andrea turned off the radio immediately, but the damage was done. The men below had stopped, heads tilted in the direction of the sound. One pointed up the slope, directly toward their hiding place. "They heard it!" Andrea whispered in dismay. "They know we're here. We need a diversion," Liam decided quickly. He dug into his pocket and produced a small red cylinder, a flare from the emergency kit Frank had given them. "When I set this off, run northeast, toward that granite ridge. Stay low, move fast. I'll circle around and meet you at the cabin." "We shouldn't split up," Andrea protested. "We'll both be caught if we don't," Liam countered. He gripped her shoulder. "This is our best chance. Roland's cabin is 3 miles that way, following the ridge line. You can make it." Before she could argue further, Liam struck the flare and hurled it in the opposite direction from their planned escape route. The bright red light arced through the air, landing in a thicket several hundred yards away. Immediately, shouts went up from the search team, and most of the men changed direction toward the flare. "Now!" Liam pushed her gently. "Go!" Andrea ran, staying low as instructed, her heart pounding in her ears. She didn't look back, focusing solely on the granite ridge ahead. The forest blurred around her as she pushed her body to its limit, branches whipping past her face, roots threatening to trip her with every step. When she finally reached the ridge, she allowed herself a quick glance back. The search team had split up, most heading toward the flare, but two men were moving in her direction, having spotted her flight. Andrea scrambled up the rocky slope, grateful for the climbing lessons her father had insisted on years ago. The ridge offered less cover, but better visibility, and multiple potential routes. She needed to lose her pursuers before continuing to the cabin. A shout behind her indicated she'd been spotted. Without hesitation, she changed direction, cutting across the face of the ridge rather than continuing up. It was a riskier route, the footing less secure, but it would be harder to follow. As she traversed a particularly narrow section, loose rock gave way beneath her foot. Andrea slipped, sliding several feet down the rocky slope before managing to grab a jutting root. Pain shot through her arm as she pulled herself back up, her knees and palms scraped raw. A brief wave of despair washed over her. She was exhausted, injured, and alone. How had her life come to this? A week ago, she had been a successful businesswoman, daughter of a respected innovator, wife to a seemingly loving husband. Now she was running for her life through the wilderness, betrayed by the man she had trusted most. The sound of her pursuers growing closer snapped her back to reality. She couldn't give up now, not when she was carrying the evidence that could bring Wesley to justice, vindicate her father, and save her company. With renewed determination, Andrea continued across the ridge, using every trick her father had taught her to minimize her trail. She crossed back over her own path, used rocks to avoid leaving footprints, and at one point waded through a shallow stream to break her scent trail. The sun was beginning to lower in the sky when she finally spotted it, a small log cabin nestled in a stand of pine trees near the top of Bear Mountain, Roland's sanctuary. Safety was within reach, but as she approached, something felt wrong. The cabin looked undisturbed, but there was no smoke from the chimney, no sign that Roland had arrived as promised. Andrea hesitated at the tree line, studying the clearing carefully. Had she arrived first, or had something happened to prevent Roland from making their rendezvous? Movement near the cabin caught her eye, a shadow passing briefly by a window. Someone was inside. But was it Roland? Liam? Or had Wesley's men somehow beaten her there? Andrea crouched behind a fallen log, weighing her options. Night would fall soon, bringing cold temperatures she wasn't equipped to survive in the open. The cabin represented shelter and safety, but also potential danger. A twig snapped behind her. Before she could react, a hand clamped over her mouth, stifling her scream. "It's me!" Liam's voice whispered in her ear as he released his grip on her mouth. "Sorry for scaring you." Andrea sagged with relief, turning to face him. "How did you get here before me?" "I didn't take the scenic route," he replied with a faint smile, though his expression quickly turned serious. "I've been watching the cabin for the past 20 minutes. Someone's inside, but it's not Roland." Cold fear gripped Andrea's chest. "Wesley's men?" "I think so. 2 of them that I've seen. They're being careful, minimal movement, lights off. It's a trap." Liam glanced at the darkening sky. "We need to find shelter before night falls. Temperature's already dropping." Andrea hesitated, clutching the backpack containing her evidence. "What about Roland? If he walks into that trap, we'll try to reach him," Liam assured her. "But we need a defensible position first. I found something that might work. An old hunter's blind about half a mile west. It's not much, but it's hidden and will block the wind." They made their way cautiously through the deepening shadows of the forest, every sense alert for signs of pursuit. The hunter's blind turned out to be a small, partially collapsed structure of logs and branches nestled against a rocky hillside. It wasn't ideal, but it would conceal them from casual observation. "We can risk a small fire once it's fully dark," Liam said, clearing debris from the floor of the blind. "The rocks will hide the light if we keep it small." While Liam gathered firewood, Andrea took out the satellite phone Roland had given her during their call. She hesitated before dialing, aware that electronic communications could be traced. but Roland needed to be warned. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Andrea's heart sank. "Roland, it's Andrea. The cabin is compromised. Wesley's men are waiting inside. Don't go there. She paused, not wanting to reveal their exact location. "Safe for now. Call when you can." By the time Liam returned with an armload of dry wood, night had fallen completely, bringing with it a bone-deep chill. He built a tiny fire in the back corner of the blind, using rocks to shield the light from outside view. "You're hurt," he observed, noticing the scrapes on Andrea's hands and the tear in her pants where her knee was bloodied. "Just scratches," she dismissed, though the adrenaline was wearing off, making every injury throb painfully. Liam dug into his pack and produced a small first aid kit Frank had given them. "Let me see." Too tired to argue, Andrea submitted to his examination. His touch was gentle, professional, as he cleaned the wounds with antiseptic wipes. "You'd have made a good doctor," she commented, trying not to wince as the antiseptic stung. "I still plan to be," Liam replied, applying a bandage to her knee. "Once all this is over. And if we end up in prison for kidnapping a mentally unstable heiress?" Andrea asked wryly, repeating what she imagined was the narrative Wesley was spinning. "Then I'll write a best-selling memoir from my cell," Liam countered with a half-smile. "The truth about the Sinclair case. How I saved a billionaire's daughter." Despite everything, Andrea found herself smiling. "I'd read that." They ate some of their remaining provisions in silence, the small fire providing minimal warmth. The forest around them was alive with night sounds, occasionally broken by more ominous noises, distant voices, the crackle of radios, indications that the search was continuing even in darkness. "They're not giving up," Andrea observed grimly. "Wesley has too much at stake," Liam agreed. "The board meeting is in 2 days now. If he can't find you before then, he'll have to alter his plans." Andrea pulled out her laptop, powering it on. The battery was at 50%, not enough to waste, but she needed to review their evidence, ensure it was organized for maximum impact. "If we can't reach Roland, we'll need a backup plan for getting this information to the authorities." As the computer screen illuminated their small shelter, Andrea noticed Liam stiffen, his gaze fixed on something outside. He quickly reached over and closed the laptop. "Movement," he whispered, extinguishing their small fire with dirt. "Southeast, about 100 yards." They sat in absolute stillness, barely breathing, as flashlight beams swept through the trees in the distance. The search party was methodically combing the area, getting closer to their position. "They'll find us if we stay," Liam murmured after several tense minutes. "We need to move." "Where?" "It's pitch black. And they're everywhere." Liam considered for a moment. "Up. They're searching the likely routes to roads and towns. But if we climb higher—" "The peak of Bear Mountain," Andrea realized. "There's an old fire lookout tower. Dad showed it to me years ago. Abandoned now, but solid." "How far?" "Maybe 3 miles, but straight up. It's not an easy climb in daylight, let alone dark." Liam nodded grimly. "Still better than being caught. Let's go." They packed quickly, donning what warm clothing they had. Before leaving the shelter of the hunter's blind, Liam paused, taking Andrea's hand. "Stay close. Step where I step. If we get separated, keep going up. The tower is our rendezvous point." The night was clear but moonless, the stars providing just enough light to make out major features of the terrain. They moved slowly, carefully, stopping frequently to listen for pursuers. The slope grew increasingly steep, the air noticeably thinner as they gained elevation. Andrea's entire body protested the climb. Her muscles burned, her lungs strained, the scratches and bruises from earlier throbbing with each step. But something drove her forward, a combination of survival instinct and burning anger at what Wesley had taken from her. Her father, her security, her identity. She wouldn't let him take her future as well. They had been climbing for nearly 2 hours when disaster struck. As Liam helped Andrea over a particularly difficult rock formation, the satellite phone slipped from her pocket, clattering down the slope and knocking loose a shower of small rocks and debris. They froze, listening in horror as the noise echoed in the quiet night. Almost immediately, they heard shouting from below, flashlight beams swinging in their direction. "They heard it," Andrea whispered, dismayed. "Run!" Liam urged, pushing her ahead of him. "Up! Don't stop!" They abandoned stealth for speed, scrambling up the mountainside as rapidly as possible. Behind them, the voices grew louder, the flashlights closer. Their pursuers had the advantage of numbers and equipment. It would be only a matter of time before they were overtaken. Just as Andrea felt her strength failing, the ground leveled out. They had reached a ridge near the summit, and there, silhouetted against the star-filled sky, was the fire tower, a skeletal structure rising from the highest point of the mountain. "We made it!" she gasped, relief flooding through her. "Not yet," Liam cautioned, pointing behind them. Flashlight beams were visible on the slope they had just climbed. "They're still coming." They sprinted the last few hundred yards to the tower. The structure was old but intact, a square cabin perched atop stilts that rose 30 feet above the ground, accessed by a steep staircase. Andrea led the way up the metal steps, wincing at each clang that seemed to announce their presence to the entire mountain. The door to the cabin was padlocked, but Liam made short work of it with a rock. Inside, they found a single room, dusty but dry. Large windows on all four sides offered a 360-degree view of the surrounding wilderness, and would allow them to see anyone approaching. No electricity, Andrea noted, looking around. There was an old desk, some shelves with faded logbooks, and a narrow cot with a tattered mattress. "But relatively defensible," Liam replied, securing the door behind them. "One way in, good visibility." They watched through the windows as their pursuers reached the ridge. The search team spread out, methodically working their way toward the tower. "They know we're here," Andrea said, her voice tight. "It's only a matter of time." Liam's expression was grim as he assessed their situation. "The tower gives us an advantage, but you're right. Eventually, they'll come up. We need a plan." Andrea pulled out her laptop, checking the battery. 40% remaining. "Let's make sure all of our evidence is properly backed up and organized. If they capture us, maybe we can at least make sure the truth gets out." While she worked, Liam searched the cabin, looking for anything useful. In a storage locker under the desk, he found an old emergency kit, a flashlight with dead batteries, some stale energy bars, and, most importantly, a hand-cranked emergency radio. "If I can get this working," he said, examining the device, "we might be able to reach someone. National Park Service, emergency services, anyone." Andrea nodded absently, focused on her task. She created a comprehensive file detailing everything: the financial discrepancies she and her father had discovered, Wesley's suspicious behavior, Dr. Harlow's involvement, the attempted murder at the hospital. She included dates, times, screenshots from her father's emails, everything that would build a compelling case. When she finished, she copied the file to the USB drive and handed it to Liam. "Just in case we get separated," she explained, "or if something happens to me." Liam pocketed the drive without comment, but his expression was troubled. Outside, the search team had reached the base of the tower. Flashlight beams played across the metal structure as men conferred below. "They're deciding how to proceed," Liam observed, watching through the window. "Probably trying to figure out if we're armed." "What do we do now?" Andrea asked, fighting to keep the desperation from her voice. Before Liam could answer, something unexpected happened. In the distance, beyond the search team, new lights appeared on the ridge. Headlights, moving steadily toward them. "That's not Wesley's men," Liam said, frowning. "They were all on foot." The approaching vehicle sent the search team into disarray. Some took defensive positions, while others retreated into the trees. As the headlights drew closer, Andrea could make out a rugged jeep crawling along the narrow ridge trail, a trail she hadn't even known existed. The jeep stopped about 50 yards from the tower. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened, and a figure emerged, illuminated in the vehicle's headlights. Roland, Andrea breathed, recognizing her godfather's distinctive silhouette. Roland Blackwood stood next to the Jeep, a shotgun held casually but visibly in one hand. From the other side of the vehicle, two more men emerged, large, professionally built individuals who moved with the easy confidence of trained security personnel. "Andrea Sinclair Thorne!" Roland's voice boomed across the ridge. "If you can hear me, it's Roland. I got your message. The cabin was compromised, but my security team tracked your phone's GPS before you lost it. We're here to help." The search team hesitated, caught between Roland's group and the tower. Finally, one man stepped forward, speaking into a radio. After a brief exchange, several of the searchers began to retreat, disappearing into the darkness. "They're pulling back," Liam said, surprised. "Why would they?" "Because Wesley doesn't want direct confrontation with someone as powerful and well-connected as Roland," Andrea explained. "Not where witnesses might survive to tell the tale." They watched as Roland and his security team approached the tower, the remaining searchers melting away into the forest. "Should we go down?" Liam asked, uncertain. Andrea hesitated. "Let me call him first. Make sure it's really him." She pulled out the emergency radio Liam had found, cranking the handle vigorously to generate power. To her relief, the device crackled to life. She adjusted the frequency to the emergency channel Frank had mentioned. "Roland, it's Andrea. Is that really you down there?" The radio crackled with static before Roland's voice came through. "It's me, Andy. Your mother's favorite painting was Starry Night. You broke your arm climbing the apple tree when you were 9. And you still keep that ridiculous stuffed penguin your father won you at the state fair in your office desk drawer." Tears sprang to Andrea's eyes at these personal details no imposter could know. "We're coming down." They descended the tower stairs cautiously, still wary despite Roland's reassurances. The old attorney embraced Andrea tightly when she reached the ground. "Thank God you're safe," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "When I got your message about the cabin, I feared the worst." "How did you find us?" Andrea asked. "Your satellite phone has GPS tracking, standard security feature. We followed it to where it stopped transmitting, then spotted the tower and took an educated guess." Roland turned to Liam. "And you must be the young man who saved my goddaughter." Liam shook the offered hand. "Liam Prescott, I just did what anyone would do." "Hardly," Roland scoffed. "Most would have looked the other way. You risked everything for a stranger." "Where are Wesley's men?" Andrea asked, scanning the darkness nervously. "Gone, for now," one of the security men answered. "But they'll be back, with reinforcements. Then we should move quickly," Roland decided. "My Jeep's not pretty, but it can handle this terrain. I've got a safe house about 30 miles from here, completely secure, unknown to Wesley or his associates." As they prepared to leave, Andrea pulled Roland aside. "We have evidence, Roland, about Wesley, about what he did to me, and possibly to Dad." Roland's expression hardened. "I had my suspicions about your father's death. It came too suddenly, too conveniently for Wesley's plans. He was stealing from the company," Andrea continued. $5 million from the Archer project, funneled through shell companies. Dad discovered it just before he died. "That matches what I found in Harrison's personal files." Roland nodded grimly. "He left a sealed envelope with my firm, to be opened only if something happened to him. Inside was a list of suspicious transactions and a note expressing concerns about Wesley's activities." "Why didn't you say anything?" Andrea asked, hurt and confusion in her voice. "The instructions were explicit. The information was only to be shared with you directly. But when Wesley reported you hospitalized for mental instability, I couldn't reach you. Then you disappeared." Roland shook his head. "I was preparing to take action when you called me." "The board meeting is in 2 days," Andrea reminded him. "Wesley plans to use it to seize control. We'll stop him," Roland promised. "With your evidence, and your father's, we have enough to go to the authorities. But we need to move carefully. Wesley has powerful friends, including Judge Markham, who would likely be assigned any emergency injunctions we might seek. They piled into the Jeep, Andrea and Liam in the back, Roland driving, and his security men positioned strategically, one in the passenger seat, one standing on the reinforced running board, scanning for threats. As the vehicle bounced along the ridge trail, heading down the mountain, Andrea finally allowed herself to believe they might actually succeed. With Roland's help, Wesley's scheme would be exposed, justice would be served, and her father's legacy would be protected. But a nagging worry persisted. Wesley had shown himself willing to commit murder to achieve his goals. He wouldn't surrender easily, and they still didn't know the full extent of his network. Who else might be working with him? Roland, she said, leaning forward. We need to be careful about who we trust. Wesley might have people in your firm, in the police department, even within Sinclair Technologies. I've thought of that, Roland assured her. That's why I've brought only my most trusted people into this, men who worked with your father for decades, and why we're not going to the authorities just yet. What do you mean? Liam asked, frowning. We need a strategic approach, Roland explained. Wesley is expecting us to go straight to the police or a judge with our evidence. He'll have prepared for that, potentially with compromised officials ready to dismiss the case or delay action until after the board meeting. So, what's the alternative? Andrea pressed. The board itself, Roland said simply. Most of the members have been with Sinclair Technologies since its founding. They respected your father immensely. If we present our evidence directly to them, before the emergency meeting, we bypass Wesley's preparations. But how do we reach them safely? Wesley will be watching them all. Leave that to me, Roland said with a confidence that reminded Andrea of her father. I didn't become the top corporate attorney in the state by being predictable. They continued down the mountain, the Jeep's headlights illuminating the narrow, winding trail. As they descended, cellular service gradually returned. Roland's phone began buzzing with notifications. News about Wesley? Andrea asked anxiously. Roland checked the screen, his expression darkening. Yes, but not what I expected. He's holding a press conference tomorrow morning. The announcement says he'll be addressing disturbing developments regarding the health and well-being of Andrea Sinclair Thorne and the future of Sinclair Technologies. He's going public with his narrative, Liam realized, trying to shape public opinion before you can challenge him. Which means we need to move even faster, Roland concluded, accelerating slightly as the trail widened. They reached the main road an hour later, where two unmarked SUVs waited. Roland's security team had planned well. They transferred to the vehicles, which would attract less attention than the mud-splattered Jeep, and continued toward the safe house. Dawn was breaking by the time they arrived. A modernized farmhouse nestled in a valley, surrounded by open fields that would make any approach visible. Roland's security team did a thorough sweep before allowing them inside. The house was comfortable but functional, clearly designed with security in mind. Bulletproof windows, reinforced doors, and a sophisticated surveillance system monitored the perimeter. Get some rest, Roland instructed after showing them to their rooms. We have a busy day ahead. My team is gathering the board members discreetly. We'll meet with them tonight. Andrea was too exhausted to argue. The bedroom was Spartan but clean, with a comfortable bed that beckoned irresistibly. She meant to sit down just for a moment, but the next thing she knew, she was being gently shaken awake. Liam stood over her, his expression urgent. Andrea, you need to see this. She followed him to the living room, where Roland was watching the television intently. Wesley's press conference was about to begin. The screen showed a podium set up in the atrium of Sinclair Technologies headquarters. The company logo, her father's design, served as the backdrop. After a moment, Wesley appeared, looking appropriately solemn and distressed in a dark suit with a subdued tie. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, he began, his voice carrying the perfect note of contained grief. I'm here today to address some deeply personal and painful matters regarding my wife, Andrea Sinclair Thorne, and by extension, the future of Sinclair Technologies. He paused, seemingly gathering his emotions. As some of you may know, Andrea has been struggling with her mental health since the sudden passing of her beloved father, Harrison Sinclair. The grief, combined with the pressure of her responsibilities at the company, led to concerning behaviors that prompted medical intervention last week. Wesley's expression shifted to one of deep concern. Unfortunately, before proper treatment could be administered, Andrea left the hospital against medical advice in the company of an orderly with a criminal record. Andrea gasped as a mugshot of Liam appeared on screen, a much younger version looking defiant and angry. Liam Prescott, age 23 at the time of this photo, was arrested for assault during a protest. The charges were later reduced to disorderly conduct, for which he served 30 days in county jail. What they failed to mention was that my victim was a security guard who was sexually harassing female protesters. I was defending a woman he had grabbed. "They're painting you as a violent criminal who abducted me," Andrea said, disgust evident in her voice. Wesley continued his performance. "Our security team has evidence suggesting that Mr. Prescott may have developed an unhealthy fixation on my wife during her hospital stay, possibly manipulating her fragile mental state to convince her to leave with him." "That's a complete fabrication," Andrea shouted at the screen. "I am deeply concerned for Andrea's safety and well-being," Wesley went on, his voice breaking slightly. "To anyone who may be helping her hide, please understand that she requires medical attention. And to Andrea herself, if you're watching this, please come home. We can face this together. Your health is all that matters to me." He then shifted to a more businesslike tone. "Given these difficult circumstances, and after consultation with our legal team, I will be temporarily assuming Andrea's responsibilities at Sinclair Technologies, as provided for in our company bylaws when a key executive is incapacitated. This will be formalized at tomorrow's emergency board meeting, but I wanted to be transparent with our shareholders, employees, and partners about this transition." Questions from reporters followed, all of which Wesley handled with practiced ease, projecting the image of a devoted husband concerned only with his wife's welfare. He carefully avoided any suggestion that Andrea might have left willingly, instead reinforcing the narrative of her mental instability and manipulation by Liam. When the press conference ended, Roland muted the television, his expression grim. "He's playing this perfectly from a PR standpoint. Concerned husband, responsible executive stepping up during a crisis. He's framing me as a kidnapper," Liam said flatly, "and dredging up my past to make it believable, and making me sound completely unstable," Andrea added bitterly. "So anything I might say against him can be dismissed as delusions. It's a clever strategy," Roland acknowledged, "but it has one fatal flaw." "What's that?" Andrea asked. "It depends entirely on maintaining control of the narrative," Roland said, a glint of determination in his eyes. "And we're about to change the story dramatically." The evening sun cast long shadows across Roland's safe house as final preparations were made. In just a few hours, they would meet with the Sinclair Technologies board members, men and women who had known Harrison Sinclair for decades, who had helped build the company from the ground up. Andrea stood by the window, watching Roland's security team patrol the perimeter, her mind racing with equal parts determination and doubt. "Are you ready for this?" Liam asked, joining her. He had changed into clothes Roland had provided, a simple button-down shirt and dark pants that made him look surprisingly professional, despite the stubble on his jaw and the fatigue in his eyes. "I have to be," Andrea replied. "This is our one shot to expose Wesley before the official board meeting tomorrow." Roland entered the room carrying several folders. "Everyone's confirmed. We're meeting at 8 o'clock at Theodore Wilson's estate. He was your father's oldest friend on the board and has his own security. Wesley won't expect us to gather there." "What about Dr. Harlow?" Andrea asked. "He's a crucial witness to Wesley's murder attempt." "Still looking," Roland admitted. He's disappeared. Took an unexpected vacation, according to the hospital. My sources say he emptied his bank accounts yesterday. Wesley's tying up loose ends, Liam observed grimly. Harlow was a liability once your escape hit the news. Andrea nodded, an odd sense of calm settling over her. The path ahead was clear now, perhaps dangerous, certainly challenging, but clear. Let's go over the evidence one more time. We need to be absolutely prepared. For the next hour, they meticulously organized their presentation. The financial records showing Wesley's embezzlement, Harrison's notes about his suspicions, the timeline of events leading to Andrea's hospitalization and near murder. Roland added documents from Harrison's sealed envelope, including a handwritten letter expressing his growing concerns about Wesley's character and activities. Your father was smarter than Wesley gave him credit for, Roland commented. He suspected something was wrong months ago and began quietly gathering evidence. As dusk deepened into night, they prepared to leave for the meeting. Roland's security team had arranged 3 identical vehicles, which would depart in different directions as a precaution. Andrea, Liam, and Roland would take the middle car, following a circuitous route to Theodore Wilson's estate. Just as they were about to head out, Roland's phone rang. His expression changed as he listened to the caller, a mix of surprise and concern crossing his weathered features. "What is it?" Andrea asked when he hung up. "A complication," Roland replied carefully. "That was Grace Chen, your father's former assistant." Andrea straightened. "You spoke to Grace? Is she all right?" "She's fine, but she has information. Something she says she's been holding for your father, to be shared only with you." Roland checked his watch. "She's at her home now. It's on our way to Wilson's estate." "We should stop," Andrea decided immediately. Grace was like family to Dad. If he entrusted her with something important, Roland nodded. "I agree, but we'll need to be quick. The board is expecting us at 8. They set out in the arranged security convoy, streetlights flashing past as they navigated quiet country roads toward the city. Andrea felt a growing tension in her chest, a combination of anticipation, fear, and a desperate hope that Grace might hold the final piece they needed to ensure Wesley's downfall. Grace Chen lived in a modest townhouse in a quiet suburban neighborhood. When they arrived, Roland instructed his security team to remain vigilant, positioning men at both ends of the street while he, Andrea, and Liam approached the front door. Grace answered immediately, as if she'd been watching for them. At 72, the petite Chinese-American woman still carried herself with the same efficiency and poise that had made her an invaluable assistant to Harrison Sinclair for over 30 years. Her face lit up at the sight of Andrea. "My dear girl," she said, embracing Andrea warmly. "I've been so worried. When I saw that awful press conference—" "It's all lies, Grace," Andrea assured her. "Wesley tried to kill me. He may have killed my father, too." Grace's expression hardened. "I feared as much. Come in, quickly." Inside, Grace led them to her immaculate living room, where a small safe sat open on the coffee table. "Your father came to me 2 days before his death," she explained, removing a small object from the safe. "He said, if anything happened to him, I was to give this only to you when you came asking about the Archer project." She placed a small USB drive in Andrea's palm. "He said it contained everything you would need." Andrea stared at the tiny device. "Did he say anything else? Anything about what he suspected?" Grace hesitated, then nodded. "He said, Wesley isn't who we thought he was. And then something strange. He said to tell you, it wasn't the first time." Andrea and Liam exchanged significant looks. "The patient Liam mentioned," Andrea murmured. "The woman with similar symptoms, whose husband was friends with the hospital board?" "We should look at this right away," Roland said, gesturing to the USB drive. Grace provided her laptop, and they gathered around as Andrea inserted the drive. It contained a single folder labeled Insurance. Inside were dozens of meticulously organized files, financial records, photographs, personal notes, and most significantly, a video file titled Final Record. With trembling fingers, Andrea clicked on the video. Her father's face filled the screen. Harrison Sinclair, looking tired but determined. His normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled, as if he'd been working through the night. "Andrea," he began, his voice strong despite his exhaustion. "If you're watching this, then my suspicions about Wesley were correct, and something has happened to me. I'm recording this on April 2nd, at my lake house, where I've been reviewing the evidence I've gathered." Andrea felt tears spring to her eyes at the sight of her father, alive and speaking directly to her. "I've discovered that Wesley has been systematically embezzling company funds through the Archer project. At least $5 million diverted to shell companies that eventually trace back to an account in his name. But that's not all. While investigating this, I uncovered something far more disturbing." Harrison's expression darkened. "Wesley Thorne isn't even his real name. He was born Wesley Manning in Ohio. 8 years before I met him, he was married to a woman named Claire Donnelly, the daughter of a pharmaceutical executive. She died suddenly of apparent heart failure, very similar to what I've been experiencing since Wesley began insisting I take the herbal supplement he brought back from Thailand." Andrea gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "I've been having my blood tested secretly," Harrison continued. "The results show traces of a compound that, with prolonged exposure, can cause heart arrhythmia and eventual failure. It's nearly untraceable after death, unless specifically tested for." Harrison leaned closer to the camera, his eyes intense. "I've stopped taking it, but I fear the damage may already be done. I've prepared this evidence for you because I believe Wesley married you as part of a long-term plan to gain control of Sinclair Technologies. He's done this before, Andrea. Claire Donnelly's family company was acquired by her husband after her death. The pattern is identical." "Oh, Dad," Andrea whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I should have seen it sooner," Harrison said regretfully. "Roland warned me about him years ago, but I was too impressed by his ideas, his apparent devotion to you. I failed to protect you, and for that, I'm so sorry." He paused, collecting himself. "But it's not too late. The evidence on this drive is comprehensive. Take it to the board. They've known me too long to believe any lies Wesley might tell. And be careful, Andy. He's more dangerous than I ever imagined." The video ended with Harrison looking directly into the camera, his expression a mixture of love, concern, and determination. The father she had always known, fighting to protect her even as he faced his own mortality. For a long moment, no one spoke, the weight of Harrison's final message hanging in the air. "He knew," Andrea finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He knew Wesley was poisoning him, and he created this record to protect me. And to ensure justice would be served," Roland added, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Harrison was always thorough. They quickly examined the other files on the drive, detailed financial records tracing the embezzled funds, background information on Wesley's previous identity, medical reports confirming the presence of the toxic compound in Harrison's blood, and most damning of all, photographs taken by a private investigator showing Wesley meeting with Dr. Vincent Harlow months before Harrison's death. "This is everything we need," Roland said, copying the files to his own secure device. "With this, plus what we've already gathered, the board will have no choice but to remove Wesley immediately and contact authorities." Andrea nodded, a new resolve hardening within her. This wasn't just about saving her company anymore. It was about justice for her father, whose final act had been to protect his daughter and the legacy he had built. They thanked Grace, who embraced Andrea once more before they left. "Your father was the finest man I ever knew," she said fiercely. "Don't let that monster destroy what he built." "I won't," Andrea promised. "I'll make this right." As they headed to Theodore Wilson's estate, Andrea felt a strange calm descend over her. The pieces had fallen into place. Wesley's carefully constructed facade was about to crumble, revealing the predator beneath. The Wilson estate was an elegant colonial mansion set on 20 acres of manicured grounds. Security was tight, with guards checking their IDs at the gate and again at the main entrance. Inside, the 7 members of the Sinclair Technologies Board waited in Theodore's wood-paneled study, their expressions ranging from skepticism to concern. "Andrea," Theodore Wilson greeted her, taking her hands in his. In his 80s now, he had been her father's mentor when Harrison was just starting out. "When Roland called us together and said you needed to address the board urgently, we were deeply concerned. Wesley's press conference today painted a very troubling picture." "A fictional one," Andrea replied firmly. "And I have proof." For the next hour, Andrea, Roland, and Liam presented their evidence systematically, beginning with Wesley's embezzlement, continuing with his plot to have Andrea declared mentally unstable and ultimately killed, and finally revealing Harrison's own investigation and the damning truth about Wesley's past identity and previous victim. The board members listened in stunned silence, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly watching with growing horror as the full scope of Wesley's crimes became clear. "Why didn't Harrison come to us directly?" asked Margaret Chen, the head of research and development, and no relation to Grace. "He was gathering conclusive evidence," Andrea explained. "And I believe he wanted to protect the company from scandal. Dad always put Sinclair Technologies first, which is exactly what we need to do now," Roland added, addressing the entire board. "Wesley has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning with one purpose: to have himself installed as acting CEO while perpetuating the lie that Andrea is mentally unstable. We need to act first." Theodore Wilson, as board chairman, cleared his throat. "I think I speak for all of us when I say we've seen enough evidence to take immediate action. Wesley Thorne must be removed from the company, and the authorities notified of these criminal acts." The other board members murmured in agreement. "But we must proceed carefully," cautioned James Harrington, the company's longtime financial officer. "If Wesley realizes we've discovered his crimes, there's no telling what he might do. He's already demonstrated he's willing to commit murder. Which is why I propose we proceed with tomorrow's emergency meeting as scheduled," Theodore said, a glint of determination in his aged eyes. "Wesley will expect to walk in and take control. Instead, he'll find himself facing the full board. And Andrea." The plan they developed over the next hour was elegant in its simplicity. The board meeting would proceed as scheduled. Wesley would be allowed to present his case for assuming control of the company. Then Andrea would enter, accompanied by Roland and the board members, and present the evidence of his crimes. Security would be in place to detain him until police arrived. "What about the press?" Margaret asked. "Wesley's narrative is already out there." "We'll prepare a statement," Roland replied. "After Wesley is in custody, Andrea will address the media, presenting the truth backed by irrefutable evidence." As the meeting concluded, Theodore took Andrea aside, his expression somber. "Your father would be incredibly proud of you, my dear. You've shown the same courage and integrity that made him such a remarkable man." Andrea swallowed the lump in her throat. "I'm just trying to protect what he built, and so you shall," the old man assured her, patting her hand. "So you shall." They left the Wilson estate shortly before midnight, the plan firmly in place. Tomorrow would bring the confrontation Andrea had been both dreading and anticipating since her escape from the hospital. Wesley would finally face justice for his crimes, against her father, and against his previous victim, Claire Donnelly. Back at Roland's safe house, Andrea found sleep elusive despite her exhaustion. She sat in the living room, going over her father's files again, absorbing every detail, preparing for the confrontation to come. Liam joined her around 2 in the morning, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering one to her. "Chamomile, guaranteed not to contain any suspicious substances." The small joke drew a tired smile from Andrea. "Thank you for everything." Liam sat across from her, his own fatigue evident in the shadows beneath his eyes. "You know, when I helped you escape the hospital, I never imagined where it would lead. Do you regret it?" Andrea asked. "Wesley's painted you as a criminal. Your career, your reputation." "Not for a second," Liam interrupted firmly. "Some things are more important than personal consequences. Justice, truth, doing what's right even when it's difficult." He paused, meeting her gaze. "Your father understood that. It's why he left that record for you, even knowing he might not survive." Andrea nodded, touched by Liam's unwavering principles. In just a few days, this man had risked everything to help her. A stranger, simply because it was the right thing to do. In a world where someone like Wesley could hide his true nature for years, Liam's genuine goodness was both refreshing and reassuring. "We should try to rest," Andrea said eventually. "Tomorrow will be challenging." Morning arrived with gray skies and a steady drizzle, fitting weather for the confrontation ahead. Andrea dressed carefully in clothes Roland had provided, a tailored navy suit that projected confidence and authority. Her hands trembled slightly as she applied minimal makeup, aware that her appearance today would be scrutinized by everyone from the board to the media. Liam and Roland were already in the kitchen when she emerged, discussing final security arrangements with Roland's team. They looked up as she entered, and something in their expressions, respect, admiration, perhaps even a touch of awe, gave Andrea the final boost of confidence she needed. "You look ready to take back your company," Roland commented approvingly. "Not just the company," Andrea replied. "My life, my father's legacy, the truth." They arrived at Sinclair Technologies headquarters 30 minutes before the scheduled board meeting. Roland had arranged for them to enter through a service entrance, avoiding the main lobby where security might alert Wesley to Andrea's presence. Theodore Wilson was waiting for them in a conference room adjacent to the main boardroom. "Wesley arrived 10 minutes ago," the elderly chairman informed them. "He's in his office now, reviewing notes for his presentation. Security has been briefed. They'll ensure he doesn't leave once the evidence is presented." Andrea took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Is everyone clear on the sequence of events?" Theodore nodded. "The meeting begins at 9. Wesley will present his case for assuming control. At 9:20, you'll enter with Roland. The board will already be present and prepared." At precisely 9 o'clock, the emergency board meeting was called to order. Through the connecting door, slightly ajar, Andrea could hear Wesley's smooth, confident voice as he addressed the board members. "Deeply concerned for Andrea's well-being, of course, but we must also consider the stability of the company during this difficult time. As her husband and the current vice president of development, I am uniquely positioned to assume her responsibilities temporarily." Andrea listened, amazed at his audacity, his absolute conviction that his plan would succeed. Even now, facing the very people who had known her father for decades, Wesley maintained the fiction of the concerned husband, the responsible executive. At 9:20, Theodore gave the signal. Roland squeezed Andrea's shoulder reassuringly as they moved toward the boardroom door. This was the moment everything would change. Wesley was standing at the head of the long conference table, electronic slides displaying graphs and contingency plans behind him. He faltered mid-sentence as the door opened and Andrea entered, followed by Roland and Liam. The color drained from Wesley's face. For a brief moment, genuine shock registered in his eyes before he composed himself, a practiced smile spreading across his features. "Andrea," he said, his voice carefully modulated to convey relief tinged with concern. "Thank God you're safe. We've all been so worried." "Save it, Wesley," Andrea replied coldly. "Or should I call you Wesley Manning?" The slight widening of his eyes told her the name had hit its mark. "I don't know what you're talking about," Wesley said, looking around at the board members. "You see, this is exactly the kind of confusion I mentioned. She's not well." "Actually, Mr. Thorne," Theodore Wilson interjected, "we believe Mrs. Sinclair Thorne is perfectly lucid." and we're very interested in hearing what she has to say." Confusion flickered across Wesley's face as he registered the lack of support from the board. "What's going on here? Has she spoken with all of you already? Whatever she's told you, you have to understand. She's been influenced by this man." He gestured dismissively toward Liam, a hospital employee with a criminal record who abducted her during a mental health crisis. "No one abducted me, Wesley," Andrea said, stepping forward. "I escaped after overhearing you and Dr. Harlow discussing my death certificate, how you plan to murder me and make it look like natural causes, just like you did with my father, just like you did with Claire Donnelly 8 years ago." Wesley's composure slipped for a fraction of a second before he recovered, forcing a laugh. "This is absurd. Claire was my first wife, yes. I've never hidden that. She died of heart failure. It was a tragedy. A manufactured one," Roland countered, placing a folder on the table. "We have Harrison Sinclair's personal investigation into your background, Wesley. Or should we use your birth name, Wesley Manning? He discovered your pattern. Marry wealthy women with family businesses, then arrange convenient deaths that leave you in control." "This is ridiculous," Wesley snapped, but his eyes darted toward the exit, calculating. Andrea opened her laptop, turning it to face the board. "My father recorded this message 2 days before his death, after discovering you were poisoning him." She played Harrison's video, watching Wesley's face as her father methodically exposed him from beyond the grave. When the video ended, the boardroom was silent. Wesley's mask had completely fallen away, revealing the cold, calculating predator beneath. "You have nothing," he finally said, his voice low and dangerous. A video from a man who was clearly suffering from paranoid delusions near the end of his life. Some financial records that can be explained a dozen different ways. You can't prove anything. "Actually, we can," Andrea countered, producing another file. "My father had his blood tested regularly during his final weeks. The tests show progressive toxicity from the compound you were giving him, disguised as a health supplement. The same compound was found in my system at the hospital. And we have Dr. Harlow," Liam added. Wesley's head snapped up. "What? He didn't just disappear," Roland explained with grim satisfaction. "He traded his testimony for immunity. He's with the district attorney right now, providing a full statement about your arrangement to falsify Andrea's death certificate." Wesley's eyes darted around the room, the full reality of his situation finally sinking in. His carefully constructed world was collapsing around him. In a desperate move, he lunged for the door, only to find it blocked by security personnel who had quietly entered during the presentation. "Wesley Thorne," one of them said formally, "you're being detained on suspicion of attempted murder, fraud, and embezzlement. The police are on their way." As security restrained him, Wesley's composure finally shattered completely. He turned to Andrea, his face contorted with rage. "You think you've won? You're nothing without me? I made you. I made this company what it is today." "No, Wesley," Andrea replied calmly. "My father built this company. I helped grow it. You just tried to steal it." The police arrived minutes later, taking Wesley into custody as media representatives gathered in the lobby, alerted by a carefully timed press release from Roland's office. The story was already breaking on financial news networks. "Sinclair Thorne, heir reveals murder plot by executive husband." Before facing the press, Andrea took a moment alone with Roland and Liam. The enormity of what they had accomplished and what she had survived was finally hitting her. "It's over," she said quietly. "He can't hurt anyone else. Your father would be incredibly proud," Roland said, embracing her gently. "You brought Wesley to justice and protected everything Harrison built. I couldn't have done it without both of you," Andrea acknowledged. "Especially you, Liam. You risked everything to help me. A complete stranger." Liam smiled, the fatigue of the past days evident in his eyes, but unable to dim the warmth there. "Sometimes life puts you exactly where you need to be, even if you don't recognize it at the time. I was supposed to be at the hospital that night. I was supposed to find you. Roland cleared his throat. "I'll give you two a moment. The press is waiting whenever you're ready, Andrea." When Roland had left, Andrea turned back to Liam. "What happens now? For you, I mean. Wesley's smear campaign painted you as a kidnapper with a criminal record. The truth will clear that up," Liam replied with a shrug. "Roland's already talking about a civil suit against the hospital for wrongful termination and defamation. But honestly, I'm more concerned about finishing medical school. That's still the plan." "I might be able to help with that," Andrea said softly. "The Sinclair Foundation has a scholarship program for medical students. I happen to know the chair of the selection committee quite well." Liam laughed. "Are you offering to be my patron, Mrs. Sinclair Thorne?" "I'm offering to support someone who deserves a chance to become the doctor he was meant to be," Andrea corrected with a smile. "Someone who saved my life in more ways than one." Their eyes held for a long moment, an unspoken connection forming between them. Not romance, not yet, but something perhaps more foundational. Mutual respect, shared experience, and the unique bond that forms when two people face extraordinary circumstances together. The press conference that followed was a triumph. Andrea, flanked by Roland and the board members, presented the truth clearly and compellingly. She spoke of her father's legacy, her commitment to continuing his vision for Sinclair Technologies, and the systematic investigation that had uncovered Wesley's crimes. "This has been a painful chapter for my family and our company," she concluded, looking directly into the cameras. "But Sinclair Technologies was built on innovation, integrity, and resilience. Those values will continue to guide us forward." 6 months later, Andrea stood at the podium in the company atrium, addressing employees and media at the unveiling of the Harrison Sinclair Memorial Innovation Center, a state-of-the-art research facility dedicated to developing sustainable technology solutions, her father's lifelong passion. Wesley's trial had concluded 2 months earlier, resulting in multiple life sentences for the murders of Harrison Sinclair and Claire Donnelly, the attempted murder of Andrea, and numerous financial crimes. The evidence had been overwhelming, with Dr. Harlow's testimony particularly damning. Andrea had spent the intervening months rebuilding both Sinclair Technologies and her own life. The company had emerged stronger from the crisis, its reputation enhanced by Andrea's transparent leadership and commitment to her father's ethical vision. As she concluded her speech and the applause washed over her, Andrea spotted Liam in the audience, looking professional in a blazer over a light blue shirt. He had returned to medical school, supported by the Sinclair Foundation's scholarship program, but they had maintained a friendship that was gradually evolving into something deeper. Later, as they walked through the memorial garden that had been planted in Harrison's honor, Andrea felt a profound sense of peace. "Dad always said that true strength isn't about never falling, but about rising every time you fall," she told Liam. "I understand what he meant now." Liam nodded, taking her hand gently in his. "Your father's legacy lives on, not just in the company, but in you, in the way you faced impossible odds and refused to be defeated." "See, we faced those odds," Andrea corrected, squeezing his hand. "Sometimes life puts the right people in our path at exactly the right moment." As they continued their walk, the setting sun cast long golden rays across the garden. Andrea thought about the journey that had brought her here, from the terrified woman fleeing the hospital to the confident leader she had become. Wesley had sought to destroy her, to erase her very existence for his own gain. Instead, he had inadvertently set in motion events that had revealed her true strength and connected her with people who valued her for herself, not her position or wealth. In the distance, she could see the Sinclair Technologies building rising against the skyline, her father's vision, now her responsibility, but no longer her burden alone. She had found her own path, her own strength, and perhaps, in the man beside her, a partner who understood both her vulnerabilities and her power. "Ready for whatever comes next?" Liam asked softly. Andrea smiled, feeling truly free for the first time in longer than she could remember. Absolutely. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.